Austin, do you want to introduce your topic tonight and tell us what you're presenting on?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Austin Timm. I'm currently just getting out of the Army. My ETS day is actually on Friday, and then I'll be completely out of the Army. So my topic for today will just be my process that I use to get a job at Boston Scientific. So I'm in my 2.5 week there. So just talk about some of the stuff that worked, what didn't work, and then kind of what I'm going to try to do now that I'm going to be out of the Army and maintaining my network and stuff. So talked to Alan maybe about a month and a half ago about what I could do to help, and this is one thing he recommended would be a benefit for everybody. So unless you want to say anything else, Alan, I can just get into it.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay, so just a little bit of background on me. I was in the Army for 4.5 years. I was an engineer officer. Spent most of my time up at Fort Drum, freezing in the snow and the cold. So got some good mountain cold weather training up there. Went to Afghanistan last year, just the one deployment, and then just moved back to Minnesota about a month and a half ago. Been on ETS leave for quite a bit now, and my wife and I actually just chose to build a house this week in Corcoran, so we're going to go through that process now since I'm going to be back home with her, so that'll be nice. And then I was able to get a job at Boston Scientific, like I mentioned, as a project manager, and in my 3rd week now in that role. So I've been able to learn a lot and still have a bunch more to learn, but excited to be here and hopefully provide maybe 1 or 2 tokens of good information that somebody can take and run with that would have been beneficial for me. So for my journey, before I went to Afghanistan last year, I knew that I was going to be getting out of the Army. So I did all my SFL TAP stuff, and I'm not sure if people are doing active duty or reserves or what the audience is, but SFL TAP is a Soldier for Life transition program that all active duty soldiers have to go through in order to get out of the Army. They give you a bunch of resume help and job stuff. And to be honest, most people don't take advantage of it at all. So if anybody is going through that right now, I'd really recommend paying attention and taking notes, because there's a lot of really good organizations there that are willing to help for free. And then otherwise you have to pay for, and it's a great thing if you can pay attention. So if somebody is going through that, I can definitely help with that, and have some contacts back at Fort Drum that are willing to help anybody. So, but at least when I completed those classes, then I was just trying to figure out like what the heck I was going to be doing. So I really didn't have any plan of like how I was going to do it. I knew networking was important, but I really didn't know really how to do it or like what the best thing was to do. So I was just very unfocused and kind of just hope that it would all work out. So I actually started most of my transitioning networking job hunt while I was in Afghanistan, which was pretty tough because it was like a 9-hour difference. So it made setting up meetings and doing different things pretty tough. But basically, once I got there and started doing it, I realized that I wasn't setting the conditions for my success. So just to kind of bring it back to like a military term. So like if you were going to the range, like with my platoon, I wouldn't go to the range without giving a convoy brief, or I'd make sure that, you know, the platoon sergeant checked for ammo. We all had water, MREs and stuff. I was basically just going through my job hunt without any ammo, without any MREs. I was just kind of hoping it would all work out. And luckily I was able to learn from quite a few people, and people were able to help me and, figure out what I was going to be doing. So some of the stuff that didn't work for me that I was just trying to do on my own before I got some guidance was mass applying to jobs. So I'd go on like Google and type in top employers in Minneapolis, because I knew I wanted to be here. And, General Mills and 3M and all them companies would show up, and I would just, all right, today's Monday. Monday's the day I'm going to apply to 3M jobs. So I'd apply to 10 jobs I thought were cool on 3M, and then never hear back and just be frustrated because I wasted 2 hours going through all those application processes and filling out the same exact questions for every job, and then never heard back at all. So it was like super frustrating. I didn't know what I would do. I honestly just thought that because I was in the military, I had U.S. Army on there, I had some cool stuff on there that people thought, oh, they'd want to hire a veteran, because I've heard that, companies want to hire veterans and, all that stuff that everybody always hears. So that was one stigma for sure I had to get over and realize that, yeah, your resume might be okay, but it's not going to be really what is going to end up getting you the job. Maybe it'll help a little bit, but for the most part, it's not going to be the part that's going to get you that sweet job that you want. Another thing that didn't work for me was networking, how I was doing it originally. So I originally was getting a couple meetings, and then they would last for an hour, hour and a half, and then I would just kind of ramble on. Didn't really have much of a structure. I didn't know what I was going to be doing when I really called the person. Like I just knew, oh, this guy was willing to talk to me. I was excited about that. But when I got into it, I didn't have a focused mindset, and I didn't really have any end state goals. And then I wasn't able to pivot to other people where they could help share their network too. So that was one thing that the first like 3 or 4 meetings, I was like, man, I'm not getting anywhere. Like there had to be a better way. So once I was able to get more focused and stuff with my networking meetings was very beneficial. And one way that I was able to do that was reading the 20-minute networking book. I was super skeptical of reading that book. I don't know how many of you have read that book, just because, there's a million job help books and, all that stuff. I don't know. I was just super skeptical. And I connected with a gentleman who is very helpful with many veterans in Minneapolis. He recommended it to me, and I got the book and I read it. And luckily it's like 150 pages. It's super easy to read. You don't have to spend a lot of time. I read it in like 3 days and didn't really put that much time into it because it didn't take that much time. It was everything I needed to get my journey started. So basically what that talked about was just spending 20 minutes with that networking meeting compared to 90 minutes like I was doing before, and getting much more beneficial, structured information from that person you were talking to. And also at the same time, show them that you cared and that you were prepared, which made them willing to be, oh, hey, this guy actually knows what he's talking about, or he knows what he's trying to do. So then they're willing to actually put you in contact with somebody else. So you're not going to embarrass them, to be honest. So like they're willing to put their neck out there a little bit more for you. So that was like a huge, huge thing for me. So if anybody is kind of struggling with their networking meetings, I would recommend that. I pulled up the link before the meeting. I can send it out in the chat. The one I found was like $9.99. It was like super cheap. So it's not like a big financial commitment or time commitment at all. And then one thing that I really also got into was LinkedIn. So like I had gone through college and undergrad and stuff and was forced to make the LinkedIn. I think I had like 100 people, just like all my college drinking buddies that were on there just to get people on there. But then when I actually looked at LinkedIn, I found some videos on Facebook or YouTube, and I was able to, condense my searches. So there's a thing you can use on LinkedIn where you can search a company, like say General Mills, and then you can search U.S. Army, Navy, Marines, and just all of the branches of service basically, and go in there, and it'll pull up everybody who currently works at General Mills, let's just say, and you can go through there and read their job titles and be like, oh, Joe, whatever, does this job at General Mills. Oh, that sounds kind of cool. And then I would just cold message them on LinkedIn and say, hey, my name's Austin, getting out of the Army, blah, 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 whatever your message is. And I actually had a really good success rate with that. Probably 8 out of 10 people would respond. And that actually really increased my network across all these companies that I just thought were so cool to actually work at. And, maybe something didn't turn out like I wanted to or whatever, but it really just increased my network very quickly, just sending those messages and going from there. So I talked a little bit about resumes, how I just thought that the resume would get me the job basically because I had U.S. Army and, that experience on there. And one thing that somebody else had told me, a different gentleman, is that every job you do apply for, you have to adjust your resume accordingly. So it can take quite a bit of time, but you're not a mass applying to jobs. Maybe you're only applying to 2 jobs a week because that's what is focused, and that's what people are referring you, or somebody HR you're talking to. Like you're not wasting all your time. So being able to have a more focused job hunt allows you to actually tailor those resumes to where you can really dial in on what those responsibilities and conditions for the job are, and then you can make your resume look like that. And that actually made a huge difference. So I don't even want to think about how many specialized resumes I had just based off the different job that I applied for. But in the end of the day, it worked out because I was able to get interviews, and then it actually helped me for a lot of the interviews that I did have, because then I knew exactly what they wanted, and then I could tailor, my interview questions and responses to the job and make themselves think that, hey, this guy could be a good fit. So it actually worked out pretty well. Another thing that actually worked out really well for me was American Corporate Partners, ACP. They're an organization where me, for example, I just emailed their corporate account and they said, hey, I'm looking to move to Minneapolis and work in business. And then they'll kind of give you like a little, who are you? What do you want? Kind of deal questionnaire. And then they'll pair you with somebody who can be in that industry, whether they're in the city you want, or they could possibly just be in the industry that you want. So it's basically just one-on-one coaching. They can help you with whatever you want. They can put you in contact with whoever they have in their network. And it's super, super low key. I mean, those guys are there to help you. And I actually was able to get one person from Coke. I had no interest in Coke at all, but it was just a guy who was like a VP, and he was able to introduce me to other people, which was awesome, and gave me some good advice from somebody who is, you know, higher up in the organization. So that was a really nice asset. So that'd be one organization I would definitely recommend. Anybody who just wants to, even if you just want to learn about whatever, pick the industry, you can go on there. You can have unlimited amount of partners and stuff, and they'll be more than happy to help you. So that is super, super nice. I'm actually hoping that, you know, once I get some experience in the corporate world again, I can be one of those mentors and help somebody else too. Because it is a great organization. Let me see here. Just looking through my notes here and see what else I didn't talk about yet. Okay. Interview wise, so you know, doing all these things allowed me to set myself up for getting these interviews. I was basically setting the conditions. I was bringing my ammo, I was bringing my food, I was bringing my water, all to the range. And then once I got to the range, it was time to perform. You know, I had to qual, get that 40 out of 40. So once you get that interview, you got to be ready. So I had been in the Army for 4.5 years, and obviously being in the military, using the F word and using swear words is way more common than ever in any civilian world. So you kind of have to change your outlook and the way you talk, which you know, can be an issue for some people. So some things I learned in the interview process. So I interviewed with 6 or 7 different companies throughout my process, and I did a range from just phone interviews, like the screen interviews, Zoom, Microsoft Team interviews. I did a couple different assessments through, like, one was even through like this third-party company, and then they do it for like 5 hours, where you do like this email assessment, and you have to answer all these different personality questions. So I mean, there was quite a bit of different things that I was able to get exposed to, which was good. Hoping that, you know, down the road that I can give some help on that part of it at least, because for one thing, I didn't know that you could have all these third-party companies help you, and you know, that was something that was quite eye-opening for me. But one thing that especially helped me for the interview process, so I was like, all right, cool, I got this interview, like, what do I do? So I just Googled, you know, top 30 or top 20 questions for interviews, and I would get those, and then I would develop my answer using the STAR method. So the STAR method is the situation, S, T is the task, A is the action, and R is the result. So putting that in mind with every question that was on the top 20 or top 30 list helped me prepare for, you know, pretty much every question that I ever had in an interview. There was very few interview questions where I couldn't change one of my answers that I already prepared for to, you know, meet whatever they were asking. And, you know, what I did is I wrote down everything that I thought was good for that question, which was, you know, whatever the situation deemed. And then it was like super awkward because I actually had my wife interview me with all those questions. And the first time, like, we both couldn't even get through without us like laughing and making a big joke of it, but super awkward. But if you can do it and just kind of not look at each other, that's what we had to do in practice. That was very helpful for me because it just put me in that mindset for one, just, yeah, exactly, Alan. It just put me in that mindset of like, hey, you know, I need to practice just like I would practice at the range. You're not just going to go to the range and shoot 40 out of 40 just because you showed up with all of your stuff. You got to become prepared and practice and know what you're doing. So that was one thing my wife and I did quite often and quite frequently, and it worked out pretty well to set me up to answer those questions in a quick and efficient manner. So definitely recommend there. Another thing that was very popular that another gentleman had recommended for me to do during my interview process was develop a 30, 60, 90-day plan. So that's basically like, you're going to be a buyer for this product at General Mills. what do you think that first 30, 60, 90 days, your goals are, your objectives. Just think about it. I mean, you can Google different stuff and there's different templates that you can look up, but if you just put yourself in that role, and then I always used it as one of my answer questions at the end of the interview, like, of course, they're going to provide time for you to, hey, what are your questions? And that was a perfect time that I would just say, hey, I developed a 30, 60, 90-day plan for what I want to accomplish in this role. Like, have you guys developed that? And then kind of try to compare it to that. And then for one is like, oh, this guy came prepared. He's thinking about himself already in the role. And then it kind of does that same thing. Whoever it gives them that thought that, hey, Austin could be this role. He's already thinking about it. He could possibly do it. So that was one thing. I mean, you can look up stuff, like I said, and just kind of tailor it to each job. But that was one thing I would definitely recommend anybody going through the interview process to have it in your back pocket to be able to talk through. And then the last thing for interviews or two last things for interviews that I was able to use was, so I was lucky enough to have a couple different job offers. And at first I wasn't sure if I should be telling other companies that, because like, you're not going to want to tell your girlfriend that you're cheating on her with another girl. You know what I mean? So like, if you got one company that thinks that, you're pretty cool, you might want to take it right away and just be happy with it. So if you can actually be open with them, I found out through like my last job interview process that it can really speed up the process. Like, you might just be impatient thinking, oh, this is taking too long, or why aren't they responding to me, or whatever. But if you're like, hey, HR, Mrs., Mr., whatever, I have a job interview and a job offer from X company, and they want me to have a response to them by next Friday or whatever, they'll be like, oh, all right, well, thanks for telling us. We'll do this and this. And that had the best follow-up rate from the people at HR. So that was one thing I didn't do initially. And it was somebody else, one of my mentors that I've been using the last few months, that recommended that just tell them straight up, hey, this is what I'm dealing with. And if you're serious about this, like, you need to come back to the table with an offer or not. And we just need to move forward, whether it's with a job or without. So definitely be open with who you're interviewing with. And then it puts that pressure back on them too, to actually act. And then the last thing that I did for my interview process was sending follow-up notes. So a lot of times, you meet with a person and maybe back in the day you could mail them a letter or give them a letter, but it's just too slow now. And then with COVID, people, you just don't want to mess with all that. So I still sent thank you notes. A lot of times I sent it on LinkedIn, because a lot of the times with the virtual stuff, the people that would send it to me for like the interviews, I wasn't able to see their email, and I didn't want to try to guess their company email and waste time doing that. So I actually just looked them up on LinkedIn typically, and I would send them a message and say, hey, thank you, and whatever my personalized note would be for that person, which was pretty nice, because I actually had quite a good response following that. Even though sometimes I didn't get the job, I just was another person I was able to add to my network, and then two, is just good to keep a little bit of a communication open. So those are just a couple things that I was able to do in my interview process, and I'm definitely by no means an expert, but it seemed to work out pretty well for me. And then now that I've been back in Minnesota for a month now, and working and getting out of the Army, definitely realize that there's still a lot of work to be done for me as a just personal level. So like, my plan now is for, trying to get back to the veteran community, obviously by trying to do a good job here presenting to you guys and give a couple tidbits of information, and then looking forward to being a part of other groups and different things like that, and trying to maintain my network. So that's one thing I still haven't figured out yet, exactly how I'm going to maintain all these people that have been helping me, and how I'm going to be able to provide back to them to maybe some help, or find a way to be able to stay in contact with them. So that's one thing I'm still learning, how I'm going to manage that. So more to come on that part of it. But yeah, that's pretty much what I had planned for today for presentation wise. Hopefully it was a little informational, and if you have any questions, fire away.